Welcome back to another episode of Fate Check, where we're checking in with all things Fate related. We got our guests here, Wes and Mike, and my name is Ian. Let's check in on some Fate. So what's going on, guys? Thanks so much for being here again for another exciting episode. I don't know if we want to introduce ourselves, just say hi, and let's go from there. Let's check in.
Yeah, this is the first episode that we have Michael Groff on with us.
That would be
he's
me.
a broadcast. That would be you. You and I have been we've known each other for some time now, so this is going to be an interesting podcast, I think, because there's some of the discussion will touch on a lot of the things that we've worked on together in the past. So that's going to be pretty interesting, I think.
Yes, 18 years at least that I can recall.
That's correct. Yeah,
I'm old.
as am I. But old is experience, right? And experience that can translate. So
Exactly.
So it's awesome. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so it's great to have everybody here. I think the first question, the first point of order for us should probably be, why are we here? What is Fate? What is Fate Check? What are we doing here?
Well, we've spent a lot of time over the last 6 months talking about F.A.T.E for obvious reasons. It's our first, usable utility. It's a pretty viable product. It's unique in the marketplace, so it's got a lot of potential. So it's great that we've been focused on it. It's also going to be a good source of revenue for us when things start to move. But there's a lot more to the F.A.T.E project than just F.A.T.E, and F.A.T.E is only just the foundation. Because when we talk about all the different things that we're building with F.A.T.E, every kind of transaction and whatnot, I mean, it all kind of fundamentally comes down to payments and to interacting with the blockchain. So while F.A.T.E is that's where most of the focus has been. That's largely just because that's where we need to be first. And when we start to talk about AuthorMark and when we start to talk about frosting and Fi-Buddy, which are some of the other projects that we're working on, then F.A.T.E is going to be tightly integrated into all those products. So I think we want to start talking more about the actual other products that are going to lay on top of F.A.T.E as a different layer, which is the AuthorMarks, the frostings, the Fi-Buddies, and just kind of start from there.
Well, with such a robust ecosystem that we're building out with Fate, these episodes are only 25-30 minutes long. So let's try. We can touch on a lot of these things, but what's something you specifically or we specifically want to kind of dive into for this episode?
Yeah, so I think talking about intellectual property and digital assets kind of aligns itself well for this episode. We can touch on AuthorMark and frosting combined. We can also touch on NFTs because it's all the same thing. So when we talk about the things that we post online, whether it's a photo of your family or something you eat, whether it's your opinion, whether you're commenting on somebody else's post or somebody else's picture. I mean, everything that we post for the most part is some form of intellectual property. And in a lot of cases, we're the owner of that intellectual property, i.e. if we're the singer of the song, or we create a drawing or an illustration, or we write an article. I mean, that's our intellectual property. And by posting it to Facebook or posting it to Twitter, by making it public, we are relinquishing some of those rights. So
Right.
and that's what gives Facebook's and YouTube the ability to make money off of your work, because otherwise, they would have to pay you. So I think that. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I just wanted to say, when we talk about intellectual property and digital assets, it's funny when digital assets is something that we've been utilizing for forever when you talk about posting things on social media. But digital assets as related in the crypto space is literally just a way to verify on the blockchain who is the original creator of this specific digital asset, i.e.
Right.
an NFT, an image, or things like that. And that's where I think, in regards to intellectual property, the blockchain technology is going to be a huge player, within this game. And it's going to help build out new technologies in regards to securing rights to intellectual property. And I think that's kind of what we're going to be talking about when it comes to Off the Mark, Frosting Social, and then also how 3Pay is kind of integrated into all these systems. But before this podcast, you asked a question, and I want to restate that question and get everyone's thoughts on it, was what would life look like if everyone owned a piece of the internet?
Right. And that's in a nutshell, that's effectively what we're trying to build. We're trying to monetize every single type of interaction that we have digitally, whether you're uploading a picture, whether you're making a comment, whether you're rating somebody. These are all things we're trying to figure out. How can we monetize that for you, the user? How can we build a utility that you have control over, that allows you to monetize and benefit from all of this value that you yourself are adding to the internet?
Yes,
Because
it's giving
that's
control. It's giving control of your intellectual property back to you. It is basically taking fate and putting it into your own hands. You control your own fate. You control your destiny, if you will. You control your intellectual property, and people are too willing to give that up nowadays, and you shouldn't be.
That's right. And it's been a growing problem for some time. I mean, this is not a new problem. I mean, 20 years ago, I worked on on my own website called Lithomark at the time, which then rebranded to Off the Mark, which we're now bringing back. And there's a lot of similarities with blockchain and what Off the Mark was trying to achieve. A different execution. So my version of Immutable was gold CDs and an archive, a vault of gold CDs that back up everything that's been recorded or all the ideas that people have registered, versus a network of servers that are scattered all over the world that all hold the same ledger. But the concept is still the same. We were trying to preserve that record of truth, that this you created, or you had this idea, or you posted this by this date, and then you had a certificate with an identification number that was associated with that, and you could always reference that. You could license your material through the website. You could transfer ownership. You could leave it to a beneficiary. So if something happened to you, that property would be passed on to your family members or your friends. All of these things we had working back in early 2000s, but we couldn't get there was a certain view of the internet in those days that the internet itself was the scam. In much the same way that crypto is the scam nowadays, it was the internet. People wouldn't put their credit card into the internet in those days. We had one paying customer.
And again, we can thank porn for paving the way of people putting their credit card information into the interweb.
And online gambling.
Those are both not false statements.
Gambling and porn always drives the marketplace. Why did Betamax not work? Because VHS was cheaper. That's the direction that porn went, and therefore VHS became the thing.
And I mean, they're doing it now. It still happens. Like all this metaverse stuff, people don't realize that this metaverse stuff is like old technology.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
the blockchain being added to it is new, but Second Life has been around since the early 2000s. That's effectively what this metaverse is.
No, you look at the metaverse okay, I need to preface this statement with, I love what the metaverse could be, and I love the direction it's going in, but as it stands right now, it's a glorified game chat.
Yeah.
Like that's really all it is. It's a game lobby.
It really is. I'll tell you, this is how old I am. I put on a virtual reality helmet back in 1992. I was in the 8th grade, and people said this is how it's going to be in 20 years. Everyone's going to be walking around with these, or glasses or whatever, and we're all going to be living in this universe of virtual reality. And what's interesting about that? While not exactly true on the timeline, the metaverse is that it is old technology. It is 30-plus-year-old technology, just slightly reskinned.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and I mean, they have obviously made a lot of improvements with the graphics and the realism of things.
Graphics. But to kind of pull us back into intellectual property, digital assets, and what this could mean eventually for social interaction, social payment systems, and for what Fate is trying to do overall. I mean, it's definitely going to have a place within augmented reality, virtual reality, and things like that. But specifically honing in on to what we were talking about of that's kind of what life would look like if everyone owned a piece of the internet, owned a piece of their intellectual property, and actually was able to monetize it and track it. Because I mean, today, you know, the only way to really track intellectual property, like really take ownership, is put like a watermark with your name on it or something like that, right? But now with blockchain technology, you can literally track wallets to see the origin of where an NFT or an intellectual property token, you know, was created.
I mean, that's a fantastic kind of a segue into how I want to make a difference with the way Optimark creates NFTs or deals with NFTs versus how they work now. So one thing you talked about was watermarks. Now it's interesting because a lot of stock photo websites, in fact, most stock photo websites, they absolutely use watermarks. But when you go to OpenSea, or you go to any of these NFT marketplaces, you'll find that none of the assets that are being displayed are protected with watermarks. So what that does is it makes it possible for other people to just take screenshots or copy paste or right click save that image and literally have like a flawless copy, making it indistinguishable from the original. They can mint that as their own NFT and cause confusion.
Yeah,
there's all kinds of.
Sorry, I want to jump in for 2 seconds because you're on a roll and I love where we're going. But yeah, it's easy to copy and paste and generate your own NFT. But for someone who knows how to read blockchain, who knows how to read a scan, they can track the wallet back and see that that NFT was not created by the original creator of this NFT line, right? But if you don't know what you're doing,
yeah, no one's going to do that. No one's going to do that. And
what's worse is
that
know how to read Etherscan or Bscan or anything like that. So if you don't know how to track wallets or track the origin, right, you really have no idea of you have to be kind of skilled. So
well, not only that, how do you define which one is the real one? Like, how does the general user, if they don't know anything about blockchain and they're just buying what they feel is a work of art or some ticket to a concert, and that's an NFT, how can you prove that one is real versus the other? This is the main question.
Yeah, for me, and this is me having experience here, you know, especially if it was a collection that was created on OpenSea, I can track the image back all the way to the original deployer of the collection and see that, oh, it's from the verified OpenSea account of, let's say, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, right?
Right.
But for someone who doesn't know,
they're not going to know.
They have no idea. Fooled.
Yeah. It's so easy to like. There's such a kind of such a learning curve to the whole crypto side of things and the back end to how all this stuff works, that the mainstream consumers are just not going to care about that, right? We have to create kind of an interpretation layer, almost like we did with 3P, with almost every aspect of blockchain, so that there's the you know, you just have the core, the simplest way to interface with these functions that makes it easy for people to understand.
Like, and it's so dumb because if you Etherscan, right? It would be so much better as if per every transaction that happened, right, if it would also have a line below those transactions that says origin wallet, right? And it showed you the contract or the wallet that was the originator of all this. So instead of having to track that, all these
you don't have to do that. There's an easier way, and I'll break it down because this is what I was trying to describe.
Yeah,
is the way that Optimark is going to do this stuff is, so Optimark are going to have, rather than when you mint an NFT, you get one image. Okay, with Optimark, when you mint an NFT, you're getting two files. One is the image, It's a preview of the image. It's a watermarked version of the image, and it's tagged with your wallet. Right? It's tagged with both your wallet, watermarked with your wallet, and watermarked with the actual contract, so that there's a way to verify both the owner and the actual contract, or the brand, or the source of the NFT itself. Okay, that's what gets displayed on OpenSea. That's what gets displayed on the marketplaces. Is a previewed, watermarked, low resolution image, so that it's linked to the actual owner and the author of the NFT. Okay. Then there's a source file that's also part of that system. Now the source file isn't on the IPFS. Okay, so there is a kind of a balance between centralized and decentralized services, but we have to keep the source file as secure as possible. So while until you buy the NFT, mint the NFT, the source file, you get to download that. That's the unwatermarked version, or the unlocked version, if you will. It's the source file of that work, whatever it is, whether it's a video, it could be a collection of files. It doesn't just have to be one file. So it could be a whole website, for example, with all of its files and all of its libraries, everything included in one zip file. That's your NFT. But the moment you post that publicly, you're giving back the ability to people to be able to do whatever they want with it. So it's important that people understand the difference between posting a source file versus posting a preview, right?
And that kind of tracks back to the whole theory, the aspect of privacy. Because if someone, doesn't care and they want the image to be for everyone, they just post not the preview file. They post the source file.
Correct.
Then people who are, no, this is my image. I want the world to see it, but only as the preview, so they can't steal my intellectual property. So we're giving people choices. And I think that's the important part of, because a lot of these social platforms and these social interactions, the choices aren't there.
No. You sign away your choices as soon as you agree to be a part of their services. When you give when you're on that end user license agreement or your terms of service, you basically tell them, hey, we can use whatever you send to us. And that's the difference, I think, that we're going for here with F.A.T.E. is we're turning it over to the people that actually create the content, as opposed to the gatekeepers and the lords that, sit around a conference table and decide what they want to keep. And, and that's your stuff. You shouldn't give that away.
Whenever I hear about user agreements, I always think about that South Park episode where Kyle doesn't read the user agreement and just signs it, and then I don't want to get into the episode but it doesn't go great. But that's essentially, no one reads that stuff.
Yeah, it's signing over your soul to the devil. You don't even know what the terms are because they have so many things. But basically what they do say is we can use this, and there have been a number of suits regarding intellectual property, and it's an ongoing discussion with YouTube and with TikTok and Instagram, all these other places. This is a regular conversation they have. And in the F.A.T.E. system here, that's something that we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid all that, which, I'm sure will make the lawyers a little less happy, but, everybody else should be happier.
Well, the lawyers are, this is good for lawyers too, because I mean, the sheer volume of content that we're dealing with when we start to talk about, social networks, like it's not just the content creators. That's something that I don't think highlighted enough. Right? Even the random who just joins Facebook, photo once a week, him doing something outside, or and he's got his little circle of 20 to 30 to 50 friends. That person is also bringing value to Facebook the same way that the content creator is. Of course, the content creator may be driving more attention and more views and driving more money, but there still is value being added by the fact that this one guy is just joining the network and bringing 50 of his friends. Because if everybody does that, that's how you get network effect. That's how you get word of mouth. And business as a whole has been benefiting from word of mouth advertising as the most effective means of advertising since basically the inception of business. Right? They all just do it different ways. Auto manufacturers, they put their logo on the car, right? And then the dealership comes along and they stick their sticker to the back of it. So you know who made the car and you know where you bought it from. and that gets promoted everywhere that you drive. You don't get any benefit from that. You don't get paid compensation for that. You're effectively advertising for that business, but you get nothing for it. It's free work. And
Absolutely.
I can give you countless of examples of this. This is what network effect is. And I've tried to describe it lots of different ways, writing about it. I've got lots of complex explanations. But that's essentially what it is. It's free work. So not only are we giving them the property and the ideas and the content, we're actually working for them as well for free, and we're paying for it because we're the ones that are paying for the devices, we're paying for the connection, and we're paying for the power.
Yeah. So the general public, we're all a bunch of suckers, essentially.
In a manner of speaking. I mean, it's not that these products and services aren't without quality or aren't without benefit or aren't without convenience. They certainly are, and that's why, you know, we promote them to each other and in our own little circles of friends and whatnot.
Right.
But essentially, you know, when you look at the internet and you look at the Facebooks and you look at the YouTubes and you look at the TikToks and these major and the Twitters, I mean, the amount of money that these companies are making off the backs of content creators is ridiculous.
And they give them a pittance in return. That, you know, if you have like a YouTube sub or something, that, you know, you'll get a few pennies on the dollar compared to what YouTube makes off of your own content. And I think that's just, it's nonsense. And the same thing. So, you know, you have these YouTubers that monetize and they go over to Patreon or they start doing, you know, they go to other places. But even then, they're, you know, somebody else is still making a pretty good chunk of change off of you. And that's, again, something that we'd love to change.
Well, that's exactly it. Because the worst part about those systems is that the only way that you get paid from YouTube is if you hit those certain thresholds that allow you to start getting paid from YouTube.
Right.
And even when you hit those thresholds, you're not making, you know, the same amount of money that somebody big is making that has a lot more leverage and negotiating power.
Right.
It shouldn't be that way. You know, if you're a small time creator and you post something, you should be able to start benefiting from the moment you post it. It shouldn't be that Google gets to advertise and make all this money in the front end, and then at some point they decide, okay, now you get to make a little bit.
And they throw a few pennies your way. And I mean literally a few pennies in some cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we are definitely looking to change that model. With every element that we're doing, and that's again comes back to what would it be like if you owned a piece of the internet, right? It would be that you would have access to these utilities like software. Like when you buy software, you own that software. You get to use that software as long as that software works, you know. And that's how you interact with the internet, rather than relying on Facebook to get your content out there or to share information with your family, rather than relying on YouTube. You know, we give people the power and to do that themselves and to take ownership and control of that. And you don't have to be on a social network to do it. You can just go to AuthorMark and register your property that way. Or if you're posting on Frosting, AuthorMark will kind of be seamless in how you post with Frosting so that you can protect property as you're posting to your social network.
In other words, F.A.T.E is going to be it's going to be the one stop for all of this stuff so that, you know, you can do all of this in one space, in one place.
That's the idea. Yeah. And hopefully it'll be compatible too. So, you know, if you want to still post stuff to Facebook, then you can post stuff to Facebook. But now what's being posted to Facebook is not the raw content, right? It's a preview of the content or some filtered version of that content, which you have control over and you can turn off, most importantly, right? So you could literally turn it off and have that turn into a bad link on Facebook if you want to remove your content from Facebook. You know,
that's one of stuff right there. That's
one of the things that doesn't get enough discussion is the portability factor of data. Like, nobody wants to make data portable between networks. Facebook doesn't want to do it. Google doesn't want to do it. YouTube doesn't want to do it, because it's all in their interest to keep that structure private so that they can leverage it as much as they possibly can themselves. A good example of that is Apple and Facebook. So Apple and Facebook were in discussions about ad revenue sharing, right? Facebook didn't want to share ad revenue with Apple. So Apple said, okay, we're going to cut you off at the legs and literally take away your ability to sell advertisement based on this kind of tracking, because you can't track this way anymore. You know, there's no interoperability between data, and you're the one that owns the data. Yet these companies are treating it as if they own it. So we want to be that kind of centralized source for you, as far as, you know, it's decentralized in the way that, and as far as the fact that you own it, you get to control it, you get to use the utilities that make everything, and it's all 100% under your control, everything. But at least it's all centralized to you, if that makes sense. So it's decentralized as far as it's disconnected from the big systems. They no longer have control. They no longer have ownership over your property. But it's centralized because now you're the one that's in control.
No, and I really, and that's one of the reasons I'm excited to hear more about Alphamark and frosting and how it's going to be developed. And then, you know, it just means another notch in the belt for the F.A.T.E for F.A.T.E as a whole, the F.A.T.E project, because you know, this kind of conversation really embodied everything that we're trying to accomplish, whether it be the 3Pays, social payment system, the social tree, embed links, or the Alphamark intellectual property, frosting social, being able to reclaim your value and being able to easily monetize everything that you do in regards to social media. And, you know, we didn't even get to talk about F.A.T.E, and I think that's something that we will definitely share on another episode, because
frankly, we didn't even talk about frosting. I mean, there's a lot to talk about in all of these different elements, and we're already pushing the limits of how long we want these episodes to last.
Frosting is going to be the social side of this thing, the social network side. 3Pay is your financial side. You know, F.A.T.E, we've got all this other stuff still to get into. That's why we're going to have plenty to talk about in the future.
So if you're listening, then maybe, you know, for our next episode, we'll go on to talk about frosting. And then after that, we will talk about F.A.T.E. And the episode after that, we can kind of go into how these things are all going to integrate together to best assist our users. But with that being said, do you guys have any last statements or snarky comments you want to leave our listeners with?
I think I'll just leave it at that. No, I think there's so much to talk about, and you know, like we're on the 30-minute mark right now, so I think that we should just kind of nix her here, and we'll catch everybody next week with some more information on frosting and F.A.T.E and everything that we're doing.
I can't wait.
I'm excited. So with that being said, this has been Wes, Mike, and Ian, and thanks for checking in with F.A.T.E Check. We will see you all next episode. Take it easy, y'all.